Squadron. As you know, we have some guests this morning. We have our Brigadier General Phelka on. We also have our New Jersey Wing Commander, Colonel Joe Abbott, his Vice Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Nick Taylor, and our Group Commander, Julio Pastorizo. So, General, at this time, you have the floor if you want to say anything for the seniors and cadets, moderation, or anything that might be happening in our organization. Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks, guys. Good morning. Really great to be with you. Thanks for the invitation. Thrilled to be able to join your squadron meeting. I looked up your squadron earlier this morning as I was getting ready for the meeting, and I was very pleased to see such strong and robust cadet growth in your unit. That's fantastic. Really, the reason I'm here, guys, is to say thank you. I really wanted to express my appreciation on behalf of General Smith and the command team for staying engaged with Civil Air Patrol while we are in this COVID-19 challenge and this shutdown that we've got going on. It would be really easy just to not do Civil Air Patrol. You know, the meetings are shut down, conferences aren't happening. It would be easy to kind of crawl into your house and be confined, be quarantined, whatever you want to call it, stay home orders. But you guys aren't doing that. You're not satisfied with that. You're staying engaged with Civil Air Patrol and you're participating in these online meetings. And I've joined a couple of these now, and I've got to say I'm very impressed with the level of innovation and creativity that squadrons are showing for these meetings. I'm seeing cadets appearing in uniform in a lot of cases. I'm seeing really quality instruction. I'm seeing multiple units banding together for instruction, everything from aerospace classes and hands-on activities to chaplains giving character development instruction to units that don't even have chaplains. So it's really fantastic stuff. But across Civil Air Patrol, we are very heavily engaged in response efforts for this COVID-19 situation that we've got. It's a national crisis. It's one of these things that happens to us maybe once in a lifetime. The response that we're seeing for COVID-19 is far bigger than we had for 9/11 in Civil Air Patrol. It's on par with the hurricane and earthquake relief efforts that we've seen in different parts of the country. This is truly a national response. We have several wings, a total of 17 wings have provided service so far in the COVID-19 situation. Everything from working in emergency operations centers to points of distribution, augmenting call centers in some states. We've got air crew that are taking aerial photographs. I know that's been happening in New Jersey. There's been a tremendous amount of ground and air support for personal protective equipment. We've seen that going on in multiple different states. Especially hard-hit urban areas are running short of personal protective equipment. We've seen a lot of Civil Air Patrol air crews and ground crews step up to the plate and deliver tens of thousands of pieces of personal protective equipment, thousands of pounds of supplies, even ventilators have been transported, and in several wings cases, both test kits that are in need and test kits that have been used and need to be transported to a laboratory. So Civil Air Patrol has been doing all of those different things in this COVID-19 response situation. I was looking at New Jersey specifically, and I know you guys have done food bank assistance. There's a Burlington City test site traffic where you guys were working on directing traffic. I think I saw Colonel Abeg's picture there. The aerial reconnaissance imagery that you guys provided for one of the test sites is fantastic. And you guys have done assembly for personal protective equipment, in some cases making it from home. And that's really inspirational. One of the things that I love about Civil Air Patrol members is they figure out a way to help their community. That's right in line with the Cadet Oath. You know, you're doing all the things that the Cadet Oath is calling for. By staying engaged, you're advancing your education and training, and that's really important. But why do we do that? Why do we advance our education? And what's the purpose of training? It's to prepare you to be of service to your community, state, and nation. And right now is when you're being of service to your community, state, and nation. So I'm personally very grateful. And on behalf of the command team, I'm grateful to New Jersey Wing, to all of Northeast Region, and all of these wings that are involved. I'm confident that we're going to see even more COVID-19 missions coming forward. So appreciate what you guys do very, very much. And I'll turn it back over to you. If you guys have any questions, I'll be here for as long as you need me.
Thank you, sir. And we do have a question from the cadet side. and we will have a question on the senior side. So let's have one of the cadets make the question.
Good morning.
Morning.
So, my question on behalf of all the cadets is, for cadets, what is like some of the biggest challenges they'll face during their cadet career?
Biggest challenges you're faced during your cadet career? Well, I'll tell you what, this situation that we have right now is probably one of the biggest challenges you're ever going to face in your cadet career. You have to figure out a way to stay engaged with Civil Air Patrol and continue to test and continue to advance your training and your education so that you can advance in the program. And then once we open back up for squadron meetings and other gatherings, to be able to continue to keep your pace and keep going forward. So this is definitely one of the biggest challenges. Specifically, though, I think there will be challenges with milestone testing during this shutdown. And we're also going to potentially experience further activity cancellations. We've already canceled National Cadet Competition. We've canceled our participation in this summer's International Air Cadet Exchange, which I know are tremendous disappointments. Some of the early encampments this season may potentially face cancellation, which is a real disappointment. So if you need an encampment for your Mitchell Award, for example, that might be a big challenge that you face. So even in the face of those challenges, though, Civil Air Patrol members are creative and innovative, and we will figure out ways to get you the training that you need, to get you the engagement that you need, the milestone test that you need, so that you can continue to advance. So my challenge to you is step up to the plate and be ready for those challenges, figure out ways to overcome those challenges, and when you have a solution that you figure out, share it with everybody. I love that the Civil Air Patrol members across the country are great at sharing best practices with each other. So please continue to do that. If you figure out good solutions to problems that everyone else is facing, shout it from the rooftops. Other squadrons need that help. Other wings are going to need that help. You know, I know you have a very strong wing commander who's not shy about sharing best practices and great things that are going on in New Jersey. So Colonel Abeg, I would definitely challenge you to listen to the great stuff going on in your units and share it with Colonel Lozer and share it with us at the command team level. We'd love to hear about the great things that you're doing.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any seniors that got a question for the general?
Yes, sir. Lieutenant Richter, Deputy Commander. So my question would be pretty much the same. Like, how would seniors keep getting the qualifications? A lot of the ones that require you to go places like regional staff college or national staff college.
Sure, great question. Thanks for asking that. In a lot of cases, a good portion of that training has been moved online. And in places where things like Region Staff College has been canceled, multiple regions are banding together to have an online version of Region Staff College. I know that's happening in Southeast and Mid-Atlantic region. The same is happening for Region Cadet Leadership School. They're combining two regions together to have an online Region Cadet Leadership School. And the in-person portion of National Staff College this year was canceled. That was supposed to take place at the end of April. And the very creative and innovative team at Education and Training at the headquarters has worked out a way to do a virtual National Staff College over the period of a number of days. And it's actually going to be able to accommodate more students than we would have been able to do had it stayed in person. So seek out ways for online training to be accomplished. Don't hesitate to band together with other squadrons and other wings to accomplish that. The beauty of virtual training is you can have people in multiple wings in different places on the globe participate in training. We just concluded a unit commander course that had not only people from the lower 48 states, but a couple of people from squadrons in Europe, part of our overseas squadrons, participated in an online unit commanders course. So seek out those opportunities for online training. In-person training will resume. We will be back to normal at some point in the future. I just don't know when that is. But there will be wing conferences again. There will be national conferences again. So those in-person training opportunities are not gone. They're just temporarily shut down. So look for ways to do it online. And if you need that information, talk to your wing's professional development officer, and I'm sure they'll be able to access resources for you.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of the seniors and the cadets of the squadron, We really want to say thank you for you taking time and spending the time with us. I'm going to introduce our Wing Commander, Colonel Ablett. Maybe he has some questions for you, and he might want to speak to the squadron. So, Colonel Ablett, you have the floor.
Thank you, General, and good morning, everyone. I just want to let you all know that I'm so proud of what you guys have done. In less than 2 years, your squadron has ballooned to one of our most active squadrons. Very active, done a lot of great work. You have a great team there. I want to thank you for all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. To our group commander, Major William Pancherisa, if you want to say a few words.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Colonel Abbott. Good morning, General Phelka. Pretty much it's being all said on behalf of Group 225 and New Jersey Wing. I want to thank you for taking the time today and spend a few minutes with us here. And looking forward to see you again in the future, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Continuing our training for today, we have the doctor. So, Lieutenant Vigner, is the doctor on?
Today we have a special guest, Dr. Scott Baliban, Research Associate at the Center of Disease and Vaccine Development down in University of Maryland. Dr. Baliban.
Thanks, Lieutenant Richter. Thank you for welcoming me back to speak to you guys. So I just wanted to say for everyone here that I am a research scientist, and I'm not a medical professional, so I can't offer you medical advice, but I can comment on anything about coronavirus biology or what's going on with vaccine development here in the U.S. or globally. I can try to answer any other questions around that stuff that you might have.
Good morning, Doctor. My name is Major Pastoriza from Group 225 here. I want to ask you, I know it's a lot of information on TV. It's like every other hour nonstop with new information. Where do you see right now, in your personal opinion, where you see our countries heading to, either fighting these virus or how doctors right now are working together, looking for a vaccine that we much needed, at this time now.
Sure. Different countries are doing different things in response to the global pandemic. The U.S. got off to kind of a slow start. We weren't doing a lot of testing and contact tracing, which means if you know an affected person is here, you would interview all of their close contacts and test them to see if they're infected. This virus can easily one person can easily infect 2 or 3 people. So in the course of 10 rounds of that, if one person infects 3 people, then you have something over 50,000 people infected. Because the U.S. got to a slow start, we are now leading the globe in terms of cases and deaths. So what are we doing to combat this? So the U.S. Is one of the world leaders in terms of novel treatments and vaccines that are being pursued for coronavirus. I think the last time I checked, there were somewhere over 50 different new medical biologics that were being tested. I think doctors all over the country are scrambling to get resources to help people to get better, and that is going down towards trying to graduate medical students and nursing students early to have them come into the hospitals to help out. I didn't know, I learned today that Civil Air Patrol is helping deliver personal protective equipment. That's fantastic. So that's another example of how people are banding together. From my end, I'm a researcher, so we have some professors here at Maryland who are actively working on therapies to try to combat the virus. So there's a lot going on right now. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we know works, but we're still testing.
Thank you for your time, Doctor. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Doctor, so this virus, how does it actually attach to your cells and affect you internally, or how does it get into your body, kind of thing?
Sure. So the primary route of infection is through aerosols. What that means is if you cough or sneeze, you generate a whole bunch of different sized droplets, and inside those droplets can contain virus. The virus can survive on surfaces like groceries or clothing or whatnot, doorknobs, things like that. So when you touch your face with a contaminated hand, for example, and it gets into the back of your mouth and your lungs, that's what the virus wants. And it will use these receptors on its surface. So if you can look at my slide on the bottom right there, those little orange and yellow blobs, those are virus. And on the very outside, you can't really see it because they're too small, but there are receptors that engage with proteins on the surface of your cells in your lungs. So the virus will enter your lung cells that way, and it has a whole bunch of interesting machinery to try to fool your immune system that it's not there, which is why this one is particularly infectious and transmittable, because it can, if you look at some of the lesions inside of a person's lung from this, they can be golf ball size to grapefruit size. And that's basically your body trying to fend off this virus, which has its own mechanisms of fighting your body. Most of the therapies that are going to try to combat this virus are going to try to dampen your own body's response to the virus, which is harming you in some sense because it is throwing everything it's got to try to kill this thing. But the virus is smart. And then other therapies are going to be trying to actually target the virus itself to sort of prevent it from doing anything but sitting there and being gobbled up by immune cells. I hope I answer your question.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yes, Dr. Scott Belvin, how you doing? This is Gabriel.
Hi, Gabriel.
Thank you. Question. Now, understand that there's a lot of types of masks that are out there, especially in the market today, that a lot of supplies are coming in short because of the demand. Now, as far as the N95, the KN95, and the surgical mask, I believe it's like the blue thin ones, do they really make a big difference, or is it just the, I guess, the quality and brand, say?
The N95 is the prototypical masks that you would have in intensive care units because it has multiple layers and a filter on it. Those are the masks that are in short supply but really need to be used by doctors in the hospital. So wearing a mask, I will say, and whatever that is made out of, if you fashion your own mask, you're able to find a surgical mask, like you said. Wearing a mask is better than not wearing a mask. You know, you might think it looks silly to go out in public or the grocery store wearing a mask, but it's probably for your own benefit. So this happened to me, and I was talking to my parents, it happened to them. But when you go into a grocery store, you turn down the aisle, before you know it, 5, 10 other people are doing the same thing, and then you're trapped in this aisle full of people where you can't maintain that 6-foot radius for another person. So I would suggest wearing a mask, a surgical mask, or one that you make out of cloth, and wearing gloves while you're in the supermarket or even at the gas station or anywhere where you expect to encounter somebody. Anywhere where you expect that you can't have control over how close somebody can be with you, wear a mask. I've seen some great examples of people being creative and making masks of their own out of old t-shirts and whatnot. So how effective are they? They're going to be decent at stopping large droplets that come out of your mouth when you cough, but anything that's really tiny, fortunately, is going to go right through. So for example, when you sneeze or cough, you generate all different sizes of droplets. So if you're wearing a mask and you cough at somebody and they're standing right in front of you, you could potentially infect them. So you definitely want to maintain your distance. If you have to sneeze or cough, do it into your elbow. But like I said, wearing a mask is better than not wearing a mask.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Good morning, Doc. How closer is the Food and Drug Administration and the Center for Disease Control to validating treatment options for this virus?
Thanks. I think there's two parts to your question. So usually when people ask me that, they want to know when something is going to be available to the general public, and not necessarily when are people who are really sick going to be able to have treatment. So when we create therapies or vaccines, usually these things take 10, 15, or 20 years to reach the general public, because you have to go through safety steps along the way, looking for these rare events that happen to people where they might get injured from a vaccine. It's the exact thing that you want to avoid. In the case of coronavirus, obviously it's a problem. We don't have any therapies or vaccines available. So ethically, we are trying to get these things to the public as quickly as possible while maintaining some level of safety standard. Is there anything that's FDA approved? No, but they're currently looking into that. So the most advanced drug at the moment is something that was used to treat Ebola back in 2013 or 2014. So there's data expected to come out of the US and China on that, I would say mid to late April. And then you're going to see in late May and June a lot of other safety studies from other new drugs that are coming. For a vaccine, there's already some safety trials underway, which is incredible with the speed at which this is happening. I would say for a vaccine to be ready to be used for high-risk people, so people who are over the age of 60, who may have underlying conditions that predispose them to coronavirus, like asthma, for example, they might be eligible for this vaccine. Maybe in a year's time, or maybe a little bit less than a year. But in terms of a vaccine for the general public, like we get every year the flu vaccine, that's going to be 2 years, which is a positive estimate. Part of the problem is, too, you need to have very big production facilities to make vaccines to be available for the general public. I can tell you that some of the vaccines that are going into people right now, they have never seen something like this before. They're going to have to pair up with other big pharma companies to even have the facilities to scale up their vaccines, which I think will happen, but it's going to take a partnership that hasn't existed before. So for right now, for people like a lot of the people on this call who I would probably say are not at high risk, you're probably not going to see a vaccine to be able to be vaccinated till maybe 2021 fall, if it's available. But stay tuned. I would say end of this month, May and June, there's going to be some really interesting studies coming, not just from the US, but from China and Europe. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
So why don't other countries just do what South Korea did during the MERS outbreak in 2015?
I'm not quite familiar with what South Korea did during the MERS outbreak. Are you asking something in particular?
Not really.
I can comment more on what they've done during this current pandemic, which is different than what's being done in the US and Europe. So it's not just South Korea, but also China as well, and Japan to some extent. They have set out task forces that it's called contact tracing. So if you have somebody that is identified as being sick, you go to their immediate contacts. What does that mean? That means their family members, their friends, or whatnot, and you sample them. And so they had tens of thousands of people in China, maybe even more, who were dedicated to this. They would go out and take swabs from people, bring them back to the lab, and then and on top of that, they told them to quarantine and whatnot. Another thing that they did is they told these people that they're going to start tracking them via cell phone and to see where their movements were. And that is a way that you can loop in police and military to make sure that people who are told to quarantine can stay quarantined. That probably wouldn't work in the US and Europe because of privacy issues. It's really a delicate area to try to tell somebody that the government or a company is going to keep tabs on you via your cell phone, because how do you know how they're going to distribute that data? I honestly don't think that that's going to work in the U.S. or Europe. I think it's going to have to be good old-fashioned contact tracing. So in the U.S., you probably would need tens of thousands to maybe 100,000 people who are just dedicated to going around and interviewing people, knocking on doors, doing tests, and telling them to stay home. There's other factors at play, like age, for example. If your population can affect how many people get sick and whatnot. But I really think a lot of it has to do with this concept of epidemic preparedness. How many people can you have on the ground walking around interviewing people? How many intensive care units and beds do you have in your hospitals? All these factors come into play. Now, China, for example, didn't have that advantage of knowing what other countries are doing. That's where the outbreak started. Other people like the U.S., for example, can take advantage of what worked in China, what didn't work in China, or what worked in Italy, what didn't work in Italy. So we have that advantage, and I hope that we use that to help us control the outbreak here in the U.S.
I'd like to ask a question as well.
Okay.
I imagine that your daily routine has changed just as everyone else on this call has as well. So can you share with us what your new normal looks like as compared to what you did before for your role?
So my role as a research scientist, I go into the lab and I do a lot of bench work. I do a lot of mouse work and trying to build vaccines and figure out how they work. The university has taken where I work, University of Maryland, has taken a strict stance on this, that they want all research that is not relating to coronavirus to stop. And so the university is really, I should say the workers at the university have taken that also very seriously. So occasionally I have to go in to check on my mice and whatnot because, we have to take care of them. That's the right thing to do. But the university is essentially a ghost town, aside from one or two labs who are working 10, 12 hours a day on coronavirus things. What does my daily life look like right now? Unfortunately, I stare at the wall a lot. I'm trying to do as much work on my computer, which is writing papers, writing grants. Sometimes I have virtual meetings, but it's tough. It's tough because sometimes you read the same thing over and over again. So I try to be very structured. I try to say, this is what I'm going to do for this 2-hour block of time. And I really break my day down very much more so than I did before, so that I try to maintain some level of productivity as I'm stuck here in my house. But what I do is I build in breaks. And this sounds sad, but a break might be cleaning my bathroom or going to Whole Foods during the day, for example. That's really how I try to maintain. Also, I've been calling a lot more of my family and friends. It's going to be brutal though going forward. I mean, if we have to do this for more months, that's going to be really tough. But I try to find anything that I could possibly do from home, anything that I can catch up on. I've also tried to volunteer for clinical trials that are going on at University of Maryland in any way I can. If I was part of CAP, I would volunteer for CAP if I could. I don't know how to fly though, so I'm not sure how useful I would be. But yeah, my life has changed pretty much. It's taken a 180-degree turn. I try not to think about what impact this is going to have long term on my career because there's too many unknowns, and that's just going to make you be very anxious and depressed. So I try to maintain, I'm working on this daily task, and this is what I'm supposed to do Monday through Friday, and hopefully things will turn around quickly.
I think we have a position for you, so don't be worried. We'll help you. Your good friend Kevin will reach out to you on that.
Okay. Happy to help.
I did hear you talk about the mice and doing lab work. Are you allowed to take those mice out of that environment and bring them home?
No. So the university, and I think this is pretty much true across the country, they're very wary of when people, it's not that the mouse itself is dangerous. It's what people do to the mice. So if you have a new biologic or something that you're putting into the mouse, they're worried if that gets out into the general ecosystem, what is going to happen. Likewise, if you so the mice that we have are very well, they live in a very clean environment, so much different than what you and I are exposed to. So if you were to take them out of that environment, like, I don't know, bring it home to show your nieces and nephews or something, and then take it back into the animal facility, you could reintroduce things that these mice have never seen before, and that would probably destroy all research that's going on right now, which in and of itself is, you're talking months of people's time, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's probably a fireable offense if you did that. You don't want to do that.
I figured that, but I definitely was curious.
Unfortunately, the mice, and not just the mice, but all the animals that are used in scientific research, with the exception of things like chimpanzees, have to be kept at the university. Chimpanzees, on the other hand, they get a little bit better lifestyle. They are retired into chimp facilities where they can live with other chimpanzees. But yeah, the mice stay here.
Well, everything you do is really interesting and so timely for everything that's going on in our world. What made you choose that career?
I've always been a fan of biology. Actually, way back when I was in middle school, I wanted to be a marine biologist, actually, because I love watching National Geographic, Discovery Channel, all that stuff. And then when I went to college, I was exposed to different topics of biology, and I gravitated towards immunology, in part because I had a really good professor who was passionate about what he was teaching, what he was doing, and it's sort of just the intricacies of the immune system really fascinated me, because you are taught something in a textbook, but there's literally an exception to every single rule, and there's examples of that happening to this day. If you're away from it for 5 years, you're too far gone in the past. Mm-hmm. So it was because of that I decided to just try out research in the lab at the University of Delaware, where I went to undergrad, and I kind of fell in love with doing research and playing around and tinkering with things, figuring out how they work. But I also wanted to do something that I knew would help people. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, a medical doctor, so I can't actually see patients, but I figured, well, if I work on vaccines, I could work on something that is going into a person to help them. So I decided to go down that track in grad school for my Ph.D., and it's been really rewarding because I get to interface with medical doctors, industry people. So that's the commercial side of things. So I get a really broad perspective about what I do. So, there are most of my days, like I said, are spent in the lab. But I oftentimes am thinking about broadly how this will have an impact and how to best get this forward into people. Where I go from here, I'm not sure. I could go to many different things. I could go into industry. I could stay as a professor in academia. If I find something worthwhile, I could start my own company. There's a lot of avenues. But the real thing is I'm passionate about science. I like discovery, and I like teaching other people about what I do. So those are the things that really drive me. I guess it's a long-winded answer to your question, but
no, it's excellent to know what made you go into that path. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you answering all my questions. I asked too many, so I'm going to give you back to Kevin.
Thank you, Dr. Baliban. I'd like to thank you very much from our squadron for showing up and twice a week now, and I'd like to thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. I have more time on my hands than I did before, so I'm happy to help out.
Okay, we'd like to move on to the lesson of the day.
General Phelka, you still on?
Yes, I am.
Before we take a break, sir, on behalf of the seniors and cadets of the squadron, and on behalf of the New Jersey wing, on behalf of the colonel, I know he's still on, and our group commander, Major Julio Pachariza, Again, I want to say thank you for you taking time and spending the time for us this morning. I know it was a great boost for our seniors and cadets to hear from you directly, and they can stay motivated because they know what we do is to try to keep them informed of what we do, and hopefully after this crisis passes, we can all get together and do what we like to do, and that is to spend the time and keep training our cadets and seniors.
I couldn't agree more, and I'll tell you, I learn something every time I come to a CAP meeting, and that includes online meetings. I think this discussion with Dr. Baliban has been very informative, very interesting, and I love the questions that folks are asking. So stay engaged with that, and meanwhile, while we're experiencing this national crisis, listen to your leaders, that's CAP leaders, as well as state leaders and national leaders, because the more we listen and the more we respect the requirements, everything from shutdowns to social distancing, the faster we can beat this challenge. And I think, as Americans, we rise to the challenge, whatever the challenge is. So sometimes that might be dealing with a little bit of hardship, not being able to get together or not being able to go shopping for what you want to shop for. But if you're willing to put up with a few more weeks of challenges, I think we get through this more quickly. So band together, like all Americans do during a time of crisis. Listen to your leadership, do your part, and thanks again for letting me be a part of this. I'm going to go ahead and drop off when you guys get to your break. So just let me say thanks, and we'll hopefully see you around in person one of these days soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break and have everybody back at 10:55, please.